Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 9, Giro d'Italia. Now, this is the stage we've all been waiting for. 192 kilometers long, 5 summit climbs here on today's stage, and it's going to finish going up Blockhaus, about 14 kilometers long. 8.5% average with pitches as steep as 14%. So you know there's going to be a GC selection at the end of today's stage. The only thing we want to know though when the race is starting is, can Juan Lopez hold on to the pink jersey or will he lose it on today's stage 5 for Trek Segafredo? Now, the other thing to ask yourself on today's stage, throughout the first 8 stages here at the Giro, there hasn't been an Italian winner yet. So we got to find out if here on stage 9, if an Italian can win to bring a little bit of pride here to the Giro d'Italia. Now, when the racing starts, guess what? It's Lotto Soudal throwing in the first attack from Holmes. That wasn't a big surprise. They have been incredibly aggressive throughout this Giro, and they're the first ones throwing in the big dig. But the rider really that's going to highlight here in the breakaway has got to be Diego Rosa. Rosa is putting on a show, and he's got Tafazio along with him from Drone Harper. When they start that first climb, those two are going up the road, and the field back there is splitting up and blowing up to pieces right away early in this Giro d'Italia. Now, up front, Diego, he starts going solo. He drops Tafazio, but Rosa will just start taking KOMs from the first KOM, the second, and third. He is on a roll here for maximum KOM points on this stage 9. Now, back in the peloton, what's happening early on these first 2 climbs is the sprinters are suffering, and so is everyone else, really. Unless you're on top form, everybody is suffering. We'll see the peloton strung out. We see massive size groups coming out the back with Arnaud Demar. Now we'll see Caleb Ewan coming out the back. Cavendish is coming out the back early. And even Wout Poels, he's not coming out the very back by any means, but he's certainly suffering. And this is a guy that's a pure climber having a bad day here on stage 9. Early into this stage. Now up front, eventually about 25 kilometers into the race, it's going to be a group of 9 up front. And of course, Diego Rosa is still there because he's putting on a show. Tafazio from Drone Harper's there, and he's got a teammate along with him in the form of Sepulveda. AG2R is represented with Gull and Nans Peters. Joe Dombrowski Astana, who was the first to make it across in a group of 3 up to those 2 leaders. He's got company with Filippo Zana, Casedo from EF Educations there, and James Knox. Quick Step. He was the last rider of the group of 9 to make it up to that group. When they all come together, it's about 25 kilometers into today's stage. Diego Rosa had been putting on a show early here at Giro d'Italia stage 9. Now, behind, as the group starts to pull away, that group of 9, the time gap keeps creeping up. 3 minutes, 4 minutes. I saw a maximum of about 5 minutes and 45 seconds to the Trek Segafredo peloton led behind. Then it's going to be with about 85 kilometers to go. That's when we're going to see Ineos start taking over. They start setting a steady tempo here on today's stage 9 to try to bring this group back into check so they can play for the general classification and for the stage win. Now, on the penultimate climb here with about 40 kilometers to go, this is when the breakaway really starts attacking each other, and it's Nans Peters from AG2R that throws in the first attack. Drone Harper, Sepulveda, and Tafazio are the first 2 riders out the back. And believe it or not, these 2 riders will get back on, and then they'll go up the road with the AG2R rider. There'll be 3 up the road until it's Diego Rosa, the Iolo Cometa rider, that catches on. Then as we come up to the penultimate summit here on stage 9, Diego Rosa is going again on the attack. He's going to get a bit of a gap, and he's going to have Tafazio along with him. Now let me remind you guys, it was Diego Rosa and Tafazio that started all these breakaways way back on the first climb, and here they are on the 5th climb, the penultimate climb here on stage 9, and it's still the same 2 riders up the road. Now they got about a 2.5 minute gap to a 3 minute gap back there on the Ineos train that's starting to put a little bit of pressure on all the GC guys. When we go over the summit, the penultimate summit here on the KOM, it's Diego Rosa that's taking maximum points for KOM. When they start to descent, we're going to see Tafazio. He's got a gap on Diego Rosa. I don't know how this is happening. They're doing 90 kilometers an hour down this descent. but it doesn't look crazy difficult. And I'm just sitting there on the couch wondering how Diego Rosa got dropped from Tafasio here from Drone Harper. Up there, Drone Harper's going solo. When he comes up to this next turn, though, there's going to be big time problems. Let me point out just before the turn, we see the turn in the picture up there on the left side of the screen, and there's Tafasio. He's on the inside of the turn. He's not even moving over to the right side of the white line. As he comes down closer to the turn, he realizes he's in trouble. Now he's going to clip his foot out of the pedals, and that is not going to help you at all. Now he's going straight off the road. His bike will go flying off. You'll see it does it further down the ditch there. Tafasio, I don't know how he came out of this in one piece because he was crashing at a lot of speed, but we'll see him walk back up and onto the road here. Now behind, it's Diego Rosa that's solo. He'll start today's last climb, Blockhaus. There's still 25 kilometers to go, so they're not on the climb proper, but it is not going to go flat or downhill again until we reach the finish of today's stage and they get in the bus and start driving back down. Now behind, with 30 kilometers to go in the group of GC favorites, it's going to be Bora Hansgrohe's Wilco Kelderman that has a bike issue. We're going to see him change bikes. When I was sitting on the couch watching it from GCN commentator Robbie McEwen, green jersey wearer of the Tour de France, my old teammate, at this point in time with 30 kilometers to go, as the peloton's doing 90 kilometers an hour, Robbie McEwen says, this is no problem. He'll get back on. Maybe he just wanted to change and go to a lighter bike. Robbie McEwen, this is a big problem right here at this moment when they're going down the descent and the guys in the front are doing 90 kilometers an hour and you got to come to a stop on the descent before you're going to start the Blockhaus climb when you got Trek Segafredo, who got two riders from this town. Ciccone lives only about 30 kilometers from Blockhaus. They were bombing this descent at maximum speed. Wilco Kelderman is back there, back on the bike finally, and guess what? When you look at the picture, there's nobody in front of him. That means he's in big trouble, Robbie McEwen. We won't see Wilco Kelderman finish with the front group on today's stage. Now as Blockhaus starts climbing proper, we're going to see the front group. It's Joe Dombrowski that caught back up to the leader, Diego Rosa. There's company there, Nance Peters, and then Joe Dombrowski's had enough and he's going solo, but he's only got a gap of about a minute on the train behind that's called Ineos. Ineos are driving it up this climb. They got their full team on the front. When they do, they wrap up all of the original break of 9 riders as Joe Dombrowski is back in the peloton. Up front, though, with UAE team members pulling hard, we're going to start seeing riders going out the back, and it's going to be in the form of Mari van Savenhoff, the quick-step rider. He's the first to go out of the general classification favorites. He was sitting in the top 10. He's going to have company, though, because the action starts getting thick and heavy. It's 13 kilometers to go. UAE Team Emirates is on the front, drilling as hard as they can, and now we're starting Blockhaus proper. Skilmos from Trek Segafredo will be the next rider to come off the back, and then his teammates race leaders here for general classification before today's race started. He's not in pink, but Ciccone was supposedly Trek Segafredo's big GC favorite here at the Giro. He's coming out the back, and he's got Bach Mollema with him. Now Trek Segafredo, Juan Lopez is going to be isolated up front in the group of favorite GC that are still racing here for the stage win and for general classification lead here at the Giro. With just under 12 kilometers to go, it's Simon Yates' Bike Exchange next to come off the back. Now, Simon Yates had crashed earlier in the Giro d'Italia and he had hurt his knee. This might be the effect of that. He says later after the stage he was feeling today's heat. But honestly, the only heat that I'd seen in today's stage, they had it marked at about 27 degrees. So, okay, I'll bump it up a little bit because maybe that was at one of the summits. Maybe it was 30, maybe a little bit more. But that's still only about 80, 85 degrees. That's not a real hot day here at the Giro d'Italia. And throughout today's stage, it wasn't like I saw a lot of riders dumping water on their heads. I can even tell you Diego Rosa did the penultimate climb basically with no water on his bike, dropped down the descent with no water on his bike, and didn't have his car pull up and give him bottles until he was close to starting today's last climb at Blockhaus. So Simon Yates is having an exceptionally bad day here at the Giro d'Italia. He'll lose over 11 minutes when it's all said and done. Now up front, it's Pavel Sivakov from Ineos that's driving the pace hard. We're going to see Koen Bouwman come out, and then Sam Oomen from Jumbo-Visma both get dropped. That leaves Jumbo-Visma with nobody left up in the front group. Things get a little more interesting when it's Richie Porte that takes over at the front of the peloton, because it's going to be Hugh Carthy, EF Education, the next GC favorite to get popped. He's going to have some company too with Pello Bilbao. Now, Pello Bilbao had a big crash early here on stage 9 where he had to switch and jump onto his teammate's bike. So you can understand why Pello Bilbao, the Bahrain victorious rider, is having problems right now at this point in time with Richie Porte setting a blistering pace up in front. Now, all this action is happening within about 500 meters of each other, as the next big chain reaction is going to be with Pozzovivo rubs wheels with the rider in front of him. That chain reaction is going to go back to our Insman, who's going to try to save his bike and keep it up. His foot will go down and touch the ground. Then it'll go back to Valverde. Then it will go back to race leader Juan Lopez, who has to clip out of his pedal and put a foot down. Now, this is going to cause a big problems because the Trek Segafredo young Spanish rider was having a marvelous climbing stage here on stage 9, and he was still with the front group. With his foot out, though, that's going to open a gap. And guess what, Trek Segafredo riders? They don't have any teammates left, right? They ran their team as thin as they could on the previous last 2 stages. And now with Ciccone dropped, with Bach Mollema dropped, with no teammates up there to support Juan Lopez, he can't get back onto the front group, and he's dropping time. First it's 5 seconds, then it's 10 seconds, then he's 30 seconds back. But the young Spanish rider's doing everything he can to get himself back up to the general classification favorites up there, who have now become a group of 11 put under the knife from Richie Porte. Ineos driving it as hard as he can. Let me point out a couple things, though. When we scan the camera back, there's Nibali there. Nibali's got some company because it's a reunion back there with Valverde and Pozzovivo. All 3 of these riders are a bit on the ancient side, but they're all 3 still in the front group of 11 right now, putting on a show. Now, right around 6 kilometers to go, we're going to see Richie Porte get on the radio, and shortly after that, Richie Porte puts in one big acceleration till just under 5 kilometers to go. Richard Carapaz throws in a big attack. He's going to make a selection. It's going to be Roman Bardet, DSM rider, who follows quickly. Mikel Landa from Bahrain victorious. He hasn't had any bad luck in this Giro so far. He's solidly locked on 3 riders in the front. Jai Henley, Bora Hansgrohe is trying to come across the gap but can't close it. Now behind, who's on the front? That's right, it's Vincenzo Nibali, the Italian 2-time Giro d'Italia champion, still hanging in strong. He's got Valverde, Pozzovivo, and Almeida, UAE team members, who started all this damage way back with about 13 kilometers to go. Almeida is still in survival mode here, trying to hold on to the train back there with Nibali so he could get back up to the front favorites. Now those 3 riders get a sizable gap, and Jai Henley, Bora Hansgrohe can't close it. He goes back to the group that now has Almeida on the front. Almeida is drilling a steady tempo. We've seen this MO from Almeida many times from Almeida as he's having problems on these super steep climbs, but he always finds a way to get back, and it's going to happen here on today's stage 2, because with about 2 kilometers to go, everything comes back together, and then we're going to see attack from who else? It's the old veteran Pozzovivo that throws in attack. Now, earlier we had lost Valverde and then Vincenzo Nibali come out, so there's only one hope for the old guard here, and it comes in the form of Pozzovivo when he throws in attack. It won't last long, because just 100 meters later, it's going to be Roman Bardet that throws in another attack, and now we got the same 3 at the front with Roman Bardet, Richard Carapaz, and Mikel Landa. Behind, guess what? It's Almeida again, the Portuguese rider for UAE Team Emirates, setting the pace and hoping they play some games at the front. Now, I got to say, the 3 up front, they threw in some small little attacks here or there, but it looked like nobody would 100% commit to making this 3 go to the line. And as you're sitting on the couch, you're like, who is the GC leader here? Who has the most to gain? Who will take the pink jersey out of this front group of 3? Or will it be Almeida, who's got to be the highest on the general classification? That's only about 5-second gap behind these front 3 leaders, again, with about 1.5 kilometers to go. But let me remind you guys, the young Spanish rider Juan Lopez, the current race leader, wearing pink here on stage 9. He's still fighting back there 100%, doing everything he can to hold on to the pink jersey. He's about a minute and 20 down on the favorites right now with about 1.5 kilometers to go. Now, just under 900 meters to go. Everything will come back together again. We'll see Richard Carapaz. He's at the front of this group of 6. Just off the back is Bookman from Bora Hansgrohe, and Richard Carapaz takes the time to zip up his jersey. You know you got to be feeling good if you got time to sit up on Blockhaus with 700 meters to go and zip your jersey up. At about 650 meters to go, Jai Hindley starts to take the front. Then he zips his jersey up also, so he looks good for the photos. With about 600 meters to go, Jai Hindley solidly on the front. We'll see a little dip right about 200 meters to go. 150 meters to go is when we start seeing the hill come back up. And from the front picture, Vivo is sitting second wheel, starting to throw his attack. That won't last long because Carapaz is coming from the back, but Jai Hindley still up at the front. Now Bardet, who is sitting fourth wheel, he starts his acceleration at 100 meters to go from the front view. It looks like it's going to be a close race as they start to go about 3 wide. 60 meters to go. We see Jai Hindley look back at the 2 riders giving him the most headache here for the win at stage 9. With 10 meters to go, Jai Hindley eases up and celebrates a victory here for Bora Hansgrohe. Jai Hindley will finish first. Romain Bardet will finish second on the stage, and Richard Carapaz will round out the podium here at stage 9. Now, if you look at the front view, it was a super close finish. And I couldn't understand why Jai Hindley looked like he was sitting up right before the line. If we go back and we look at the aerial view from 150 meters to go, what was actually happening, Vivo was opening up the gap back there. Richard Carapaz had to come around the outside of Vivo, close that gap up to Jai Hindley, and then Romain Bardet had to come around the outside of Richard Carapaz, which of course, anytime you're going the outside, you're extending the length of real estate left to the finish line. Jai Hindley, when we see it from the aerial view, he really had this stage locked up with 150 meters to go with that exceptional acceleration. Now Bora Hansgrohe, not only do they get first on the stage, but they'll get 7th on the stage because Bookman did a solid job back there of trying to salvage a result here on stage 9 for Bora Hansgrohe. Jai Hindley, with today's stage win, will move up on the general classification. But guess what? I told you we had to keep an eye on Juan Lopez because he was going solid back there, and he did enough to finish 15th on the stage and keep the race leader's pink jersey here on stage 9 by about 15 seconds over all the other favorites. Now, Almeida, who did a solid job of closing every gap back there for the last 4 kilometers of today's stage 9, he'll take second on the general classification. So, with Yates dropping early, Almeida's the big favorite here on the general classification. But you got to ask yourself, can Juan Lopez get better throughout this Giro? Remember, he's young, he's looking fabulous, and the only reason that he lost big time on today's stage is because of those wheels overlapping and him having to clip out with about 8 kilometers to go. If you're going to go back and watch this race, I'd recommend watching it from about 35 kilometers to go, or watch it from the Ultimate KOM there at the top, and from that to the bottom, it'll be a fabulous race, and you won't have to spend all day sitting on the couch. So, excellent stage. It did not disappoint today at the Giro. Look forward to the rest day tomorrow with Beyond the Coverage, and I'll come up with some kind of story that's interesting for a preview that comes up for Stage 10's Giro d'Italia. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next edition.